On today's Question of Faith, what happened at World Youth Day? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I'm Mike Hayes. I am the Young Adult Ministry Director in the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ference, the Vicar for Evangelization.
And I am Father Eric Garris, Vocations Director, Diocese of Cleveland.
They let you back in the country, did they?
They did, yeah. I've been back in this wonderful United States of America.
For just a little more than a month now, too. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what day it is, and I don't know what day that we were just talking when this comes out.
Are you over jet lag?
I think so.
Did any dogs smell your luggage at the airport?
No, not this time around.
Not this time.
No. I smelled my luggage, though, because I spilled something on it in Paris, and I'm like, what's going to happen here?
Back in World Youth Day 2005, I was bringing my teens back from Germany, and one of my girls, as she was getting her luggage, she's like, "Oh, look at this dog, he's so cute." And the dog was like, "Ruff, ruff, ruff." And before you knew it, they took her back. She had an apple in her her backpack, and they had to throw away the apple.
Yeah.
I had a whole bunch of Lourdes water that got through, which was good.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
When I came back from Toronto World Youth Day, they were asking for volunteers to give up their flight because all the flights are oversold. And so I had nowhere to be. So I was like, sure, I'll give up my flight. And they had said, well, we'll give you $300 if you give up your flight. Well, what I didn't realize was that it was 300 Canadian dollars.
Oh, so you got
150 American at that point in time. So I was like, wah, wah.
Yeah.
But they did upgrade me to first class on the way
that's
back.
nice.
Toronto, New York. So not bad.
Where were you ministering at that? You were in Buffalo or
No, Busted Halo in New York, yeah.
Oh, New York, okay.
So we were exhibiting in the exhibit area, and then we did a lot of like guerrilla marketing outside, handing stuff out about the website.
Because we went from Parma to Toronto on bus, because it's only 6 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad. Yeah.
I don't know. What would the drive be from New York City? Probably
about 8. Yeah, because it's Toronto's 2 hours from Buffalo, so and 6 hours New York to Buffalo. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, how about it, man? What was World Youth Day like?
We did it. It was a pilgrimage. It was wild. It was crazy. It was great. It was everything in between.
Give us some highlights. Give us 3 highlights.
3 highlights. So let me think. So prior to going to Lisbon, where World Youth Day was held, we flew into so our total trip, we flew Cleveland to Chicago, Midway, bus from Midway to O'Hare to Madrid to Paris.
Wow. And
we were in Paris for like a day and a half, 2 days.
How many of you?
There were 30 from our group. Our group was the St. Charles Borromeo group in Parma and St. Francis of Assisi Gates Mills. It was a mixture of young adults and young people, from all over the place.
And the priests were you and Father
Myself,
Steve Flynn and
Father
Korak?
Steve Flynn, Father Josh Korak, and then we eventually linked up with the St. Mary's and Hudson group, who was they were 40, and Father Scott Swinnerton was with them early on in the trip and then left. But anyway, so we were in Paris for about a day and a half, and then we're in Lourdes for about 2.5, 3 days. That was amazing. I'd never been to Lourdes. And that's when we started seeing a lot of pilgrims. And that was a huge thing, just to see so many young people everywhere all the time, praying, joyful, on pilgrimage, on the journey. So Lourdes was awesome, and then we took a bus from Lourdes.
Hold on, did you do that candlelit vigil at
every
night?
Every night, yeah.
Every night they do that?
Yeah, they do it every night.
I've
and then
never been there,
prior to that, they do a Eucharistic procession every day. And what's super humbling about Lourdes is that you have all of these people who are quite sickly. And I remember seeing there was this, a 50-year-old man who was being pushed by his 30-something-year-old son with his grandson sitting in his lap. So they're the sick, they come out, and the amount of people who volunteer, that was amazing. So Lourdes was super cool. And then we took a 6-hour bus ride from Lourdes to Barcelona. Airport. We didn't even see the city. And then we flew from there to Lisbon. And once we got into Lisbon, that's when things started getting wild, because that's when everyone starts ascending on the city.
Right.
And I think the other cool, so Lourdes was great. We also went to Fatima, which was awesome. I met Jacinta, who is Jacinta's niece, one of the Fatima visionaries.
Yeah.
And there was a really cool thing where I'm like, your aunt and uncle are saints, and had Mary appear to them. And she's like, yes. It was no. See, no, she spoke English. It was super ordinary. But once we were in Lisbon, we saw the Pope all the time. He stayed 2 blocks from us, and we would just run into him. at the grocery store, or no, we were on our way to the grocery store and would see him.
I was following you on Instagram, and
Yeah.
it did seem like every couple
Yeah.
hours, hey, there's the Holy Father again,
Yeah.
in his Popemobile. I'm like, we gotta, yeah.
Yeah, so we'd see him like coming and going. But it was just so amazing, like to see that amount of people from all over the world excited about their faith. And like the crazy thing is, and you talked about this, remember we were talking about it like in preparation. You have 1.5 million people, and like I'm sure things happen, but like there's like no violence or like anything. Like it's just like it's just happening, you know, like
Right.
and there's a spirit of like there is a deep spirit of church where you're providing for people and like you're helping people out and you're talking to people, and you were talking about like the trading of stuff, and like we had a bunch of kids in our group who I'm like, you came here with nothing. How did you end up with like you look like the United Nations with the amount of flags that you're like cloaked in and all that. So it was really cool. There is a deep like these people. There might be a language barrier, but there's a common faith that holds us together, and a deep love of that faith that brought everyone there. And everyone was just like, yeah, we're here, we're hanging out. Like it was super great.
I remember in Toronto we said that we were walking around and someone said, well, you know, this is great, you know, the Pope is here and everything else. And one of my colleagues said, it's a beautiful day. There are all these amazing young people here from all different countries in the world, and they're all here because they're Catholic. He goes, the Pope is just like the cherry on top because everything else is like just amazing. And I was like, yeah. That's
and the cool thing about Pope Francis is that, and I didn't know this, but usually when he travels, he's got that like Popemobile and he's glassed in and he's encased. But he told them, he said, for World Youth Day, I don't want there to be glass. I want to like at least have more access to the young people. And they said, well, if that's the case, then you have to drive faster. So, but like we would see him the one day for the welcome ceremony. He comes in, he snakes the crowd, and everyone's climbing on each other and trying to get a picture of the Pope and trying to see the Pope. But like after that, we're like, all right, we saw the Pope. So we went back to where we were staying. And on the way back, like we're going to the grocery store and we see a barricade forming like, oh, there's the Pope. So we knew that like after events, we could see him. And there was one day where we saw him. I saw him on the way to an event, on the way out of an event. And then we're like, well, he's staying right over there. Let's go hit up where he's staying. And a huge crowd was there. And there was a little Portuguese boy who my guess was like 7 or 8. And he's just like standing there looking around in the sea of people. And I like pointed to his mom and like, I'm 6'2", and like pointed to my shoulder. She's like, yes. So I like just picked this boy up and put him on my shoulders, and he has his mom's phone because you can't see anything.
Right.
But when you're 8 feet tall on top of a guy who's 6'2". So that was a cool image of church for me. It's like, here's this kid I don't know, and it's like we're all trying to get a glimpse of the Pope, and that was super neat.
It is amazing how important the role of the Holy Father is when you're in his presence, because you think about it. I shared this last time, my first experience in 1997. So I knew about the Holy Father, read about him, but to be there, he is this makes Catholicism, that we have the Vicar of Christ. Christ entrusted the keys of the kingdom to Peter, and it's been passed down. And to this day, we can say that's our guy. That's the one and he's there to unify the church. So there's our figurehead. And bishops, just like Bishop Malesic, he's the head shepherd of this diocese, but here's the head shepherd of the whole Catholic Church at this point. And he's able to call World Youth Day, and we're able to rally around in a way that other Christian denominations are not able to. So it is really a great gift. And to feel it like palpably, like there's our man, like there's our Pope. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's
we had someone in our group who had said, like, I saw Paul McCartney and I've seen the Stones. She goes, like, but none of them can hold a candle to this. And I think part of it is that he's not just yes, he is a person, but what he represents is far more than just his own self. And you're like, when you're in his presence, there's this sense that I'm part of something bigger than this. And that's obviously seen an image in the fact that like 1.5 million people from all around the world flock to they don't flock to a person. They do. Yeah. That person's Jesus, but like they're not there just to see the Pope. Like they're there to see the church.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. So Springsteen's on tour now. He's sick. We'll have to say a little prayer for him. But back in 2000, he used to do this shtick during his live performance where he would say, unlike the other preachers, I cannot bring you eternal life, but I can bring you life right now. And when it comes to like Paul McCartney or the Rolling Stones or these great musicians, and bands, like, yeah, you can go there and be like, oh, this was great. They were a great performer. But what the Holy Father brings is not simply something of this world. He allows us access by his particular office and the whole church united around him. We're connected to the church triumphant, right? The angels and the saints, the communion of saints through this. And it's to be part of that is really inspiring and edifying and humbling too. Like, I am part of something that's bigger than this world, and it's old, you know?
And that's where, so what happened at World Youth Day? I think people encountered the church.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think of even like we had kids in our group. One of our seminarians, Andrew Bendahan, had never been on a plane before.
Oh, right.
And his first flight was to beautiful and wonderful Chicago Midway, which then took him all over. But like, and also too, like Father Damien's from Parma. Like, our image of church is so easily imaged by our image of our parish.
Right.
Sure.
But to have this experience, like we talked about, seeing the Pope, but then the final day, you trudge into the field, and that's where it's like, this is wild. Like, it's a mixture. I think Mike had mentioned, like, I just kept saying, like, Woodstock, FEMA refugee camp, Pope in the middle.
Yeah, right.
But like where we slept, it was, one of the kids told me, they're like, I didn't sleep. Like, and not because I just couldn't get comfortable, and it's crazy. And then, like, in our little section, there were 10,000 people. Yeah. I had this girl from France whose like feet were in my face, and you're under this bridge, and the porta potties are being emptied every 2 hours, and you're downwind from that, and you're just I'm heavily distracted. But at one point, I was just sitting there like looking around, laughing. And one of the kids saw me. They're like, "What? Were you like losing your mind?" I'm like, "No, I just kept thinking like, this is what I do now. I sleep under bridges." And like, but it was this cool sense that like, we're doing this, you know. Yeah. And then like for the Mass was just crazy to hear. The Mass was in this bigger park, and as priests we were up close, and I got my vestment. We were talking like priests are like, we're supposed to get our vestments the night before from, I think they said like 11 to 2 a.m. Well, the bridge we were supposed to close was going to cross. It was closed. And so there were like 3,000 priests just like pushing up against each other, all yelling at each other. We eventually got our vestments, you know, you know, and like so there's a funny thing there. But like for Mass to hear like the responses and then to hear them echoed for like the next like 5 minutes, you're like, this is crazy. Like, I know what I'm seeing, but like you see the overhead shots and you're like, this is nuts.
What languages did you hear during the opening ceremony? Did he greet in all the languages?
He didn't. No, they did. Like we welcome all of our English speaking pilgrims, and but Mass was typically, the opening Mass was in Portuguese, which is a wild language. Like, it reads like Spanish and it sounds like French, German, Spanish, everything. Like, what the heck is going on? But the Pope preached in Spanish. And that was cool, too, because we would all kind of, like, huddle around a radio and, you know, hear the person translate. And he would go off script every so often. He was the opening ceremony, he talked all about, like, God's call is for all of us.
Todos.
He's like, say it with me. You know, all. So you can tell that he was energized by it. But, yeah, we heard during Mass, they would do different stuff, and the Mass parts were in Latin and in English and in Spanish and in Portuguese and in French, and you're kind of just going through it all.
It's so fun to be part of that, the universal church there, gathered at Mass together, right, at Eucharist, and to see it all spread out. Like, if you've been to the fest in our diocese, I don't know how many people are usually around for the Mass, maybe 5,000. I mean, there's 30,000 throughout the day, but about 5,000 for Mass. So if you could imagine 1.5 million, and to be part of that. And you're right, it's like, it's not comfortable, it stinks, you're tired, you're a little groggy, you didn't sleep, but you're there. And that's a big part of life too. Like, it's not going to be perfect, but the Lord's there in that imperfect setting, and he's with you, and you're like, I'm Catholic and this is cool.
And it energizes. Like, the final 2 days, I probably slept 4 hours out of 48. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going.
But see, here's a good lesson, that when things are important like that, even though they're uncomfortable or it's hard to find parking, you got to walk, people are willing to do that. I think back to 2016 when the Cavs won the national championship of the NBA. We had 1.3 million people down here in downtown Cleveland. It was uncomfortable and you're waiting out in the sun, but you're still there because it's an exciting place to be. And I think as those of us who are doing professional ministry, that's important to keep in mind when we put on events. It's not like, well, where am I going to park and am I going to be uncomfortable? Yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to have to walk a while. Who cares?
But it's
going
worth
to be
it.
fun.
Yeah.
And if you need accessible parking for particular reasons, we'll find it for you.
Right.
But everyone else, you can walk and you'll be a little uncomfortable. That's okay.
I remember when we were in Philly, so the night before, we had seen, this is very similar to your experience, Father Eric. We had seen the Pope the night before because he was staying at the seminary right up the block from St. Joseph's University where we were staying. And so we just went out on City Avenue and, Papa got to come home sometime. And so he came down the street and waved at us and everything else, and everyone was like really excited. Well, that was the closest we got to him the whole time we were there because we didn't have tickets for the Mass. We just decided to go and be in the city and just absorb the energy of the city. And I remember at one point, we were trying to get in, we didn't get in, and everybody was getting a little cranky. And so I gathered everybody together. I said, okay, look, we have a choice. We can go and find a restaurant and watch this thing on TV, or we can go back to St. Joe's and watch things there, or we could stay in the city and just be with everybody who's in the city. And they all looked at me really strangely, and they're like, we're going to stay in this city. What's wrong with you? Why would we ever take any of the two other choices? I said, well, you're getting cranky, so I'm just making sure you don't want to go back.
They were getting hangry. I think that's what they were getting.
Yeah, hangry is right. Yeah.
What's also crazy, though, is, and I'm just thinking, you've got 1.5 million people, and, the one day there was just this Irish bishop who was in town for a wedding. All right, and you met him there.
Oh, yeah.
Bishop Dennehan.
Bishop
Tom, yeah. And he was there, and he had stayed at the Cathedral Rectory, and I had breakfast with him. He's like, oh, we'll get together at World Youth Day. I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, we did, and we had breakfast together. So I walked down, I had breakfast with him, and I was trying to leave, and it was like a 15-minute walk. So I'm like, well, I'm going to hop on one of these bird scooters, and I'm going to ride on out of here. Hopped on the scooter, and immediately it dies. It's like you're out of range. You can't go this far. And they shut it down because they didn't want people doing all that. And where we stay. Yeah. So then I'm trying to find a spot for the next 10 minutes to park this thing because it's you need to park it in an area where it's allowed to be. So I'm all over the place, and I'm going east, west, everywhere. And I just find a random corner, and it's you can park it here. So I parked it there, hop off my scooter, and I see this girl who I was in the Holy Land with, and I'm like, hey, Natalia, how are you? And she's like, oh, hey, Father, how are you? Great to see you. Well, the previous day, I was in Fatima. Vocation Director from Florida was like, hey, I hear you're in Fatima. Can you pick me up a stole? I'm sure we'll run into each other. So I'm way outside of where I am. I run into this girl who just so happens to be in this priest group, and this priest just so happens to be staying at the hotel next to where I am. And I'm like, hey, Chuck, here's your stole. He's like, oh, thanks so much. But it was totally normal. It was so weird.
World,
yeah.
Man.
And even at Mass, the final Mass, another priest who I was in the Holy Land with sat in the row in front of us, and we just kind of huddled around a Magnificat and celebrated there. So it was just this weird thing of I felt so at home because I was surrounded, obviously, by Catholics, and it was a similar culture, but it was all these people, you kind of know each other, and you're
right.
You're in the middle of Portugal, but you're running into the same people and your friends and all that. Yeah.
And whenever you do any national stuff at all, as a priest or as a lay minister, right? You get to meet people all the time, right? And you develop relationships and things like that. So at World Youth Day, we went over to the Bishop's Conference or something, and a bunch of people just know who I am from my Busted Halo work, right? And I don't really think it's a big deal, but my students were like, who are you?
Yeah.
How do you know these guys? Because I've done work with them. And they're like, you okay? And then one of them said, do you know Bishop Barron? And I was like, enough to say hello. I said, but I don't know him incredibly well. And then all of a sudden he walked in, he looks over, he goes, hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. And my student was fangirl, and was
even though we're one big happy family. Mm-hmm. Archbishop Perez, we ran into him. He talked to us for a bit. Right. It was good to see him, and he was asking us all about Cleveland. So,
yeah, it's a shared Catholic culture. It's one body, many parts, and it's nice when you assemble on a global level.
For sure.
It's very cool.
World Youth Day, more like World Family Reunion Day.
Well, let's go. Seoul, Korea, 2027.
That's right.
My classmate, Father Paul Chu, Sung-Hung Chu, was the very first Korean seminarian from the Diocese of Daegu to go through our seminary system, be ordained here. And do you have a classmate?
I do, Father Peter Bong, who's...
So let us go visit our Korean classmates in 2027.
That's a great idea.
Oh, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, me
I'll
either.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because World Youth Day it's chaos.
Yeah, sure.
And it's kind of managed chaos, and it would just be interesting to see how like an Asian country does that. With the orderly and get things done, and it's dirty, but I don't imagine like
they've got 4 years to 5 years to prepare.
Yeah,
4
they
years
got a
to
lot of
prepare.
time to prepare. Yeah,
Let's go.
My friends were saying that what they didn't know about South Korea is that Christians are actually now the biggest religion there. That it's been a growing religion for many, many years.
they're sending priests to Cleveland.
Yeah, exactly. So they said that it would be really interesting to see it in that context there. Yeah. So, happy Labor Day, everybody.
With your spirit.
And we'll talk about a church. So, where were we going for church?
St. Jerome.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So they were one of the hosts of 9 Nights of Night Prayer recently. And I think I may have stopped in there once when I was a seminarian, but I was just in there a couple weeks ago. And it's a beautiful church on Lakeshore Boulevard in Cleveland. It would be the North Collinwood area.
Right. Somewhat Waterloo-esque.
Right. Father Anthony Simone, what is his role? Is he the sacramental? He has a canonical title. He's not the pastor, though.
One of his titles is my classmate. That's a title of his.
Yeah.
Or I'm his classmate. I forget what he is, but he's not necessarily the administrator, but he's also at
St. Aloysius.
St. Aloysius, and he's, I forget what they call it. Not presbyteral moderator. Maybe it is that.
I think it is that. That's
presbyteral moderator. But Father Anthony Simone is there. He's a joyful guy. What I love about St. Jerome's is when he first moved there, so the Waterloo area, I love. You got Citizen Pie, you got Six Shooter, you got these cool places.
Beachland Ballroom,
yeah. So we walked over and saw him, and he was showing me the parish. I'm like, hey, your bell tower, that's a cell tower. He's like, what? So he went into the office. They're like, yeah, we make money off of that because that's a high point in the area.
Oh,
but the neighborhood, and I think a lot of people still come back into that neighborhood and go to Mass there. And Sue Cohn is the principal there. Last year I did a teacher in-service day for the school, and they've got a great faculty who are trying to educate and inform young people. So,
and St. Jerome is the patron saint of Scripture scholars. We have a room dedicated to him now at the seminary. And the Cleveland Museum of Art has a couple great images of St. Jerome. He's often depicted without a shirt and a skull, usually like on his desk, and he's studying Scripture. So he's like the J.R. Smith of the saints. He doesn't wear a shirt.
He's also the patron saint of...
lives in a cave and argues with St. Augustine.
Yeah, curmudgeons, so he's Father Damien's patron.
Well, I'm not a curmudgeon. I'm choleric, but I got the sanguine side, so I'm funny, too.
Yeah.
Part of what I wanted to do there is I always get accused of derailing this conversation.
Well, you did. All right, so let's go on to the next thing.
So speaking of Scripture in St. Jerome.
Speaking of Scriptures, good trick. Look at Mike. Mike, it's like Mike knows what he's doing.
He's the professional here.
Yeah.
He's got the experience.
Gospel of Matthew this week, Jesus said to his disciples, you guys might want to pay attention to this. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him your fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have won over your brother. If he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you. Don't take me, please. So that every fact may be established on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell the church. If he refuses to listen to the church, treat him as you would a Gentile or a tax collector.
Oh, would that we follow the Lord's directions here. I think, and Mike, you know this from the way that we try to talk on our floor.
Yeah.
If you have an issue with someone, talk it out as an adult. I say, let's talk like adults, because we live in a world, especially on social media, where it's just and crying and yelling out, and but never talking to the person that has offended you or that you perceived slighted you. And oftentimes maybe they didn't. And if you just have a conversation, the angst or the heat can dissipate a bit, and if it doesn't, maybe bring somebody else in. But so often we run off and just start complaining rather than having an adult conversation with someone.
And sometimes when we do that, people are like, "Oh, that's what you meant,"
right?
You know, or "Oh, yeah, okay, I didn't think, or I didn't think you meant that, but I wanted to make sure," you know.
Right.
Yeah, putting someone on blast. You just go out there and you're like,
Yeah, or when you said this, I felt this way. Oh,
Right.
but I didn't mean that. I actually meant this. And, that makes a lot more sense. And then all right, well, we're on the same page. Rather than looking and presuming the worst of people, it's sitting down.
So
and
how
talking
did you
like
feel when I
adults.
called you a curmudgeon?
Well, I felt like you were speaking hyperbolically, which you tend to do to try to get a rise out of people. And I know myself well enough that I don't think I am a curmudgeon, although I do have an edge of my personality that is also paired with a funny
All right,
side.
let's cut him.
So
Yeah.
there we go.
I
That's
don't see
how
curmudgeon. I don't see
I
curmudgeon
think
coming
the next.
from you.
I think
Just
the
saying.
next question of faith is just how do you feel?
It depends when, though.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's right.
speaking of feelings, I saw the Barbie movie. We could.
Oh,
talk
did you
about
see
that.
it?
Yeah.
Maybe that's another. I listened to the one with Mary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mary
I
Benino.
actually
and you.
spoke with Mary this morning
Mary
about it.
Fugate, actually.
I thought
Oh,
there
I'm
was
sorry.
a lack of complementarity shown in there. Although I like Greta Gerwig, and I think she's trying to expose a lot of stereotypes.
Sure.
So we could talk about that another time. But
Absolutely.
I enjoyed the Barbie movie.
I'll have to go see it now. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
so.
and we could talk about it.
Yeah.
I played Barbies yesterday. I was down in Ashland with my niece and my nephew, and so my nephew wanted to play baseball. My niece and I then played Barbies. That was the reconciliation. Whereas,
Hey, September 10th, what are you doing at 5 p.m.? You want to go to Ashland and can celebrate Mass with Bishop Grease, the 4th Ballpark Mass?
I can try. I can look
Okay,
at my
good.
calendar.
We'll see you there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There'll be an all-star game also, so you get to watch some good
At
softball.
3 p.m.?
Wow.
3 p.m.
And it may be the only ballpark mass that has
happens?
not had rain. They all happened, just not in ballparks.
That's right. So pray for good weather that day, if you would. Maybe to St. Jerome. Did he have anything to do with weather?
We lived in a cave.
He didn't wear a shirt, so it must have been nice
Yeah.
out at some
Isn't
point.
it thought that he
Probably
lived in
had
the
skin
cave?
cancer.
He lived in the cave in which Christ was born. He moved to Bethlehem, and that's where he was.
That's why he was, whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Now I know.
Now you know.
The more you know.
What's something that you know?
It's time
I know
to end
that.
this
I know it's time
podcast.
to end this podcast. That's right. So we'll know this and a whole lot more next time on Question of Faith.